after showing Lyndon his place, and that it really wasn't worth it to torment Heathcliff all that time over the course of that, well, his time at Wuthering Heights. The staircase that they were using descended for much longer than they anticipated. It wasn't clear how deep they were. Roger was questioning if there was even an end to those stairs. Well, you're not in Princess Peach's castle for a start. Those stairs go upwards, not downwards. Honglu wondered if the depth was necessary. The servants must have had quite the hard time putting the stairs together. Yisang suspected that if they operate like the mechanisms of the corridor, they likely weren't installed by hand. Sinclair was having a hard time dealing with this, as this was a painful reminder of the staircase that led to the branch facility beneath what used to be his home. And this was around 9 months ago. Yeah. Dante could tell that this was the case from the dark look on his face. And he made it clear that it was like the basement of his home. Dante asked if what happened then still haunted him. Sinclair couldn't say that he's completely moved on from that, but he would eventually. Dante could see that, and Sinclair saw that as good. He was unsure if he was just imagining that he's getting better. Then Dante felt a sudden, yet familiar tickling sensation on the head. The unpleasant sound of something approaching, dragging itself. No, crawling across the floor. Gregor noticed this too, asking if it can't be an abnormality there. Dante said no. Then Sinclair could tell what was coming, based on the pattern of events so far. As did Faust, who said that the Pecatula were there. Mersault pointed out that it's not a Lobotomy Corporation branch, nor was it connected to one. Like it was from Sinclair's mansion. Faust confirmed this, as the branch facility in District 20 was quite a distance away. Mersault didn't see how this was happening. Faust saw that there was a cause to the effects regardless. Mersault understood, as did Ishmael. She told them that whatever it was at the end of that stairwell. And at that point, they were forced to fight more Pecatula in order to make any more progress, including a Phase 2 based on the Gluttony Pecatula that had not been encountered before. As they got to the bottom of the staircase, Gregor made it clear to the others that he didn't have the faintest idea as to who might be behind what they were dealing with, but it was clear to him that someone didn't want them to reach the basement. The closer they got to the entrance, the more Pecatula they encountered. Sinclair understood that there was only one way that they could have come from, as there's no other entrances on the way down. Radia wanted to know what they were keeping in the basement. Gregor seemed to think that rich families with big mansions usually kept basements for things like fermenting good whiskey. Well, there are worse things that could be down there. I suspect that there's much worse than that where you're going. Roger seemed to think that they're also being used to store treasures. She knows this because she's raided the basements of rich people. Likely when she was with those communists in all but name, the Eurodivia. Honglu told them that it depends on the family. but if they have something to hide, they'd hide it in the basement. Rodya then asked Heathcliff to check the diary again, believing that something new might have appeared on the pages, like it did earlier. This annoyed Heathcliff. It was just a diary. It doesn't matter how many times the papers were asked. Then Heathcliff noticed something, and Dante saw this and asked if there was something wrong with the diary. Heathcliff felt an odd sensation earlier. He dismissed it, believing it to be the chills, but he felt that again. He's not sure how to put this, but the diary, he had the strongest sensation, like when the glass window shattered on its own. Faust thought about this, and had an idea for Heathcliff. He thought that she was thinking that he was losing his mind, but no, that wasn't what she was going to say, as it was obvious that the ink used to write the entries wasn't an ordinary ink, seeing it as a small chance that his suspicions might be true. Ishmael didn't know what they were talking about. Faust advised Heathcliff to open the diary. He did so with a somber expression. And surprisingly, that worked. The ink stains on that page transformed into a series of legible alphabets. The entry said, "I once had a dream of my own death or an eternal slumber. I found myself in heaven upon my waking. It was just as it was described in the books. I was surrounded by angels who sang a song for me. But at that moment, I also understood that I belonged elsewhere. I cried and pleaded with the angels to send me back, and the angels were so furious that they cast me out from heaven, back into the middle of the violet flowers on top of Wuthering Heights. Only then did I truly awake in this world, sobbing for joy. Now that I reminisce upon that memory, I no longer believe that it was a mere dream. It was just as real as the ghost from a youth that I have seen haunting this very manor. Yes, if we were in heaven, we shall be eternally miserable. Thus we must embrace the encroaching sins and descend into the world beneath." So she was saying it was better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. Well, hell can't be imagined to be much worse than the city. Sinclair saw it again, the "we." Ishmael noticed that most diaries were written in the first person, asking Heathcliff if he knew anything about that. Heathcliff didn't know. She never once mentioned that dream to him. Yisang saw what he had to say as baseless conjecture, but apparently they must embrace the encroaching sins and descend into the world beneath, the diary telling them to face the Pecatula and continue to descend into the basement. Heathcliff asked him if Catherine planned all this. Yisang was unsure if that's what Faust implied earlier, yet he asked Heathcliff if it didn't appear to him that the diary was answering to him. Heathcliff was relieved to find out it wasn't just him that felt that. Sinclair had a thought on Catherine, even though he didn't want to speak ill of the dead, but she seems a bit... Melly confirmed that she was quite a character, if a bit frightening sometimes. Then Heathcliff asked Nellie about what Linton said about him burning his letters in the incinerator, asking her if he really did intercept the letters before they reached the cafe. Nellie wouldn't put it past him. Heathcliff silently agreed. As they entered the basement, Yisang was silent at the sight. Ryushi saw this as an ostentatious production. She saw this as something to do with the performing arts. Sinclair then asked if the others saw this. He saw people in glass tubes, their eyes closed. Some of them were open, asking if they were dead. Roger didn't see this as making sense regardless. She wanted to know why there was something like that under the manor. I recognize the glass pods, and if they are what I think they are, damn. Masot saw that they were all dressed differently. No age or gender patterns could be discerned. He reminded them of the large-scale cases of missing persons that had been sweeping District 20 in recent times. Before Masot could talk more about that, Nelly then pointed out something, asking if that's the golden bar that they're looking for. At the end of the basement was a woman inside a coffin. Heathcliff immediately recognized her as Kathy. She appeared at peace, like she was having a pleasant dream. Otis saw machines attached to her coffin. Masot saw two levers, both pointed downwards. Dante saw that attached to the coffin was the golden bar, shimmering with the golden light that they were familiar with. Heathcliff begged Kathy to wait for him. He paid no attention to what was in that room. The glass pods, the chaos of his surroundings, all that mattered to him was the coffin. Then Dante saw that Don Quixote was transfixed at something. Rather than sprinting alongside Heathcliff, she was standing still at the sight of something. And apparently she thought that it was a misunderstanding. Dante wanted to know what she meant. Ishmael thought that she was talking about the people in the pods. They were clearly the ones that were kidnapped. Don Quixote was talking about those flanking the machines. They've seen them before. Urifi Association fixers, seeing them as honourable. The Urifi fixers didn't react to this. She might be ignorant with how the world worked and what was in it, so she didn't carelessly assume anything. She wanted answers. Heathcliff was far less diplomatic, demanding that they get out of the way. They told her, the others, as in Dante, Nelly and the Damned Dozen, that the area was off limits. Heathcliff didn't give a about this. All he cared about was that Catherine was right there, and he won't let those stand between them. Apparently the Urifi fixer didn't expect them to get there so soon, realizing that they needed to buy some time, ordering the dregs to be unleashed. Dregs? That's how the Pecatula were described in... Oh. Then they were forced to fight them. After fighting the Pecatula, Faust recognized the glass tubes. Sinclair didn't know what she meant, but he could see that the Pecatula were crawling out of the pods. The same pods that the people were trapped in. He didn't know why they were Pecatula. Yisang spoke to Faust regarding what he was seeing, and Faust let him ask. He saw that she had the gift of omniscience and brilliance. She knew what the others didn't already know. Yet some things were better off unspoken, which is why she didn't share with the others, so he asked first. He recognized what he was seeing. Faust was silent as he was about to ask her. He wanted to hear her own opinion in case he was incorrect, seeing if this was an experiment on the subject of humanity. Apparently, the purpose of their experiment was to use the energy stored within the golden bar to utilize every strand of possibility. One of the many experiments using the golden bar. It's an experiment to birth a certain kind of human, casting a wider net of possibilities. The basement was the engine room where the power source was activated. The manor was a laboratory. Dante noted that Faust looked like she was pausing to look at something before speaking, as if she knew more than she was saying. More so than usual. Yi Sang recognized this. Honglu noticed this and asked if he did. Yi Sang saw it as clearly recognizable. The machines were of his own design, of his research. And it was clear that his research was being corrupted without his permission or even his knowledge. It was certainly not intended for this, not to exploit or purpose humans. Ishmael noted that he turned pale upon seeing this, and who can blame him? He was visibly disgusted as what his work was being used for. She understood that his misused research wasn't the only problem. Honglu was surprisingly perceptive and noticed that there was something that Yi Sang feared. His eyes closed, and then he told them that, well, about what he feared. Parts of the machine were of his own design, but none of that could be put together without the assistance of his fellows, not without. Then he faced forwards. Dante knew that he was looking at a man. This man was dressed in an N-Corp uniform. Yi Sang recognized this man and saw that he was recognized by him as well, telling him not to stand in silence. This man saw that it's an appropriate response for him. Preferred to greetings, antagonized words, inquiries of his well-being, seeing it as no different than when he always remained a close fellow of silence. Yi Sang understood that if he can speak so placidly surrounding those abominable horrors, he's clearly a part of this. This man identifying himself as Asia. Oh, Virgilius is not going to like hearing about this. Asia didn't see this as his sole volition. He wasn't one with a grandiose ambition. The Wi-Fi fixer told him that he shouldn't reveal himself. Asia told them that they're already aware of who they are. Why hide in the shadows, when light has shone on them? Would be unsightly cowardice. This was irritating his allies as they were getting tired of playing to his whims. They decided to make sure that they'll hear of everything that has happened. Ryushu wanted to know what this they might be. Docents? Maestros? Roger thought that they were Arifi fixers, but Ryushu sensed something was off about them. Dante remembers that she said something was off about the Arifi fixers earlier during the will reading. Ryushu told them that they aren't Arifi, seeing them as cheap imitations. Don Quixote was confused by this, but was able to shake this off quickly enough to fight them. These experiments, brought to you by NCorp, the same people that brought you canned experiences. Want to experience suicide without actually killing yourself? Then We've got what you have. Yeah, that's actually their singularity. And not just canned suicide, where they can get it out of vending machines. Okay, let's remind ourselves of the events of Leviathan, where in District 14, the Ring, the mad artist finger, one of the 5 most powerful syndicates with power that rivals that of the Wings, N-Corp included, whose singularity is canned experiences, which allows people to experience a number of things, including suicide, without actually needing to do that themselves. They're also big on drugging those that they see as under their employ to make them more compliant. Well, at least Asia, one of the researchers, was conducting an experiment involving the glass window technology, where it involved those being tested exposed to many variants of themselves, most ending up in cocoons and hatching as pecatula, a form of distortion that that occurred sometime after the White Night, that full week of light being released from the library at the end of Library of Rowena. And at least one was completely taken over by a variant, and at least one was distorted in a different way, such as Maestro Jumsun, while one was able to utilize the variant's abilities. Garnis being that one, that rookie fixer under Virgilius's employ, where he utilized variants of himself in the roles of a ring maestro, Lulu, and the Black Silence. As for the short version of these events, most of Virgilius's office was killed by N-Corp taboo hunters, as the video footage that led them there was recorded from District 14. The others were killed during this, including the turncoat that was working for the Ring, largely out of fear, although Garnet was unaccounted for. Yes, don't exactly know what his fate was. All I can tell you is, he's unlikely to be truly dead. Lapis, one of the other surviving orphans, that was the daughter of the syndicate boss that Virgilius killed, which was why she was in that orphanage in the first place, became Charon. Then Faust found them, and, well, we already know what that led to, don't we? As for Azia, he was one of the League of Nine, as was Gubo, who was sent there to retrieve him in Leviathan, clearly both, well, through in their loss with N-Corp, and considering that at least Herman wanted to destroy the multiverse, I doubt that they have any good intentions for the Golden Bars. The false Uifi fixer spoke to Heathcliff, saying that he was to be the sacrifice for the ritual in that laboratory. He should never have been down there. They're ruining their plans, asking who sent them down there. Roger told them that she didn't know if they'd believe her, but it was a diary. Yisang asked Azia to please stop. It was painful for him to see the faces of those he once longed to see appear at such unexpected times, only to depart in such a hurry. Azia asked if he remembered. He never had talent in fighting directly, considering to use the mirror or an equivalent technology as he did, believing that the experiment would have been more entertaining if he was there beside him from the start, telling him not to be so sorry for the brevity of their reunion. They'll see each other soon. He needed to make his exit. He rarely leaves work on time, as he does many jobs at once, leaving the damned dozen to the false Uifi. Yeah, Azia is clearly a model N-Corp researcher, as in amoral and into mad ideas. I can understand why they'd work with the Ring, or at least a faction of them. The false Uifi were then slaughtered, until only one remained. Ryushu stopped that one with a swift swing of her scabbard, thus incapacitating him. Ryushu normally didn't give any less of a about what kind of art the Ring made, but she found this one quite interesting. She then revealed that they were Ring playing Uifi, asking if this was pop art. Rodia was surprised to find out that they were fighting the Ring. Yes, those mad artists where the higher the rank, the more insane they were. Dante asked if they were the middle's neighbour. This made Rodia laugh at how they put it. She didn't know much about them, but what she did know was that they were all at least halfway insane, obsessed with what's beautiful. Well, Virgilius would know. They're part of the reason why he's with Limbus Company in the first place. As he told Garnet they only trust what they saw, much like Encore. Well, he at least was thinking that in his head anyway. Ryushu added that they ran their own art gallery and displayed their own art, but none of their work was to her taste. And this insulted the Ring researcher. They didn't understand the true philosophical beauty of pointillism. Ryushu asked if a maestro was involved in this. The researcher didn't see this as a place that's worth the presence of a maestro. Apparently these researchers are no longer a part of the Ring. Splinter faction. And he was growing angry. Ryushu was asking what were they, and this made the researcher laugh manically, ridiculing them if they thought that he'd tell them so easy. Then Heathcliff was growing tired of this and smashed his skull in. This didn't matter. All that mattered to him was Catherine in her coffin. Oh yes, and pointillism is a technique of painting in which small, distinct dots of colour were applied in patterns to form an image. It differs from divisionalism, as it's focused on the style of brushwork rather than colour theory. Yes, clearly these researchers used to be affiliated with Maestro Drumsun, who was killed towards the end of Leviathan. And considering what was going on there, and it might have gone the bad side of whoever was in charge of the Ring, or too many of the other maestros, it caused them to align themselves with Encore once more. Well, that would appear to be how it appears, at least. Nellie was unsure of what to make of this. Ryushu was annoyed by Heathcliff, as it was just starting to get interesting. Dante asks him what he's going to do. Heathcliff saw it as obvious. He's going to get Kathy out of there, out of whatever she was in. Dante was asking what about... They were about to speak of the people in the glass pods, but Heathcliff was aware of this. He didn't care about Dante's meaningless pleas. They won't stop him, reminding Dante that they knew that he was a heartless. They knew how much he's been waiting for that moment. Nellie wanted to say something to Heathcliff, then Ishmael told him to give them time, believing that there has to be a way to shut down the power supply. Then they can pick up the golden bar from the coffin. Then Heathcliff was not amused by Ishmael, telling her not to even try to lecture him, asking her if she thinks that she can change his mind. Ishmael couldn't argue back, as she understood his pain better than most. Dante asked if this was the best time to beat some sense back into him, like they discussed earlier. Then someone else appeared to give them something else to deal with. Hindley and the dead rabbits. The former saw them as a band of thieves that have come to pilfer his home. Hindley, this is Linton's home now. You lost it and he inherited it from Kathy. Nellie was concerned by the sight of Hindley's appearance, asking what order he gave to the dead rabbits. Heathcliff wanted to know from Matthew, asking where they've been that whole time, asking if he knew the state of the dead rabbits. Not to mention that he's heard the rumour that the dead rabbits are long gone. Matthew told Heathcliff to take it easy. Then Hindley said that this was his home. He nearly had that game. It was his. If only that hadn't got that card. Matthew advised Hindley that such problems require a deeper consideration. When everything suddenly starts going wrong in his life, the cause has got to be lurking somewhere, hiding out of his sight. Hindley gave it some thought. When or where everything went wrong. He then saw what he thought was the cause of his misery. Where everything wrong happened because of Heathcliff, which confused him. Hindley then saw that on that bloody winter and windy night, when Heathcliff, some lowlife, vagrant child, arrived at his home, before his eyes, with the broken pieces of his violin, seeing that as where everything went wrong, he smiled cruelly as he said that he should have died that day, succumbed to frostbite all alone in some colourless backstreets hole. Matthew advised Hindley to calm himself. They're running low on manpower. No need to waste their strength against them. Hindley, full of paranoia, hatred and rage, believed that he could handle them, reminding him Matthew then said that he had gone through several augmentation procedures and was sent to a boarding school by his father, where he learned how to fight. This made Hindley glare at Matthew with a look of reproach, as though he was going to attack him for interrupting him. But he didn't care. Hindley stated that he was once the master of that manor. Yes, the master of that manor, and not some low-life hooligans who crawled in there, looking to reave what doesn't belong to them. Yes, to take what doesn't belong to them, if you want simpler terms. Telling them to stay out of his way. He's going to kill Heathcliff, seeing him as a mangy dog, seeing him as someone that he should have killed when he had the chance. Then the dead rabbits were unleashed on the damned dozen. Hindley was struggling to stay standing after that battle, clearly as Heathcliff told Dante. All those augmentations did for Hindley was to make him a slightly sturdier punching bag. Matthew reminding him of what he told him. Beware the obsidian grass. This caught Hindley's attention. This confused Ishmael. Isn't the boss of the dead rabbit supposed to be working for Hindley? Asking why does it look like he's provoking Hindley to fight them, to rile him up. Then Gregor asked what obsidian grass was. Roger knew. Obsidian grass was black clovers, as in a playing card for poker. She recognized the shape and color. Well, that's understandable considering that she was an expert gambler. Then he started laughing insanely at the thought of obsidian grass, believing that it was Matthew all along, seeing it as always like this, believing that he was always surrounded by opportunistic, backstabbing whose only goal was to suck his fortune dry. He didn't see there as any place for him, not even in Wuthering Heights, seeing it as because that Heathcliff, that vagabond invaded their home, why should he be subject to such? Then he heard someone speak. Dante understood the pattern by now. Hindley talked to seemingly nothing, seeing this voice as one who understood. All he wanted was a small fancy violin. That's all it was. But he tossed him to the mud pits in the rain like he was a rabid dog, lest he remembered every single word that his father told him. He can even recite it from the top of his head. Dante sensed that he was distorting. Apparently, his father told him that he regretted that he couldn't bring himself to consider a reprobate like him as his own child, seeing Heathcliff as more his son than he'll ever be. Ooh, this family is seriously up. There is no innocence in this. Just who did what to whom. Yi Sang recognized this from observing Dong Rang, as Hindley too is on the edge of suffering. They too muttered to themselves as though they were conversing with an invisible partner. Honestly, were none of them paying attention to what was being said each time? If they did, they'd be able to piece together that the invisible partner's name was Carmen. I mean, Dong Rang even referred to her as Miss Carmen. At one point, during his distortion and then manifestation of EGO. Dante then asked Masson if he can stop him from distorting like he did with Angdu after incapacitating bamboo-hatted Kim. Sadly, this was impossible. He tried approaching Hindley. Yes, there was a force pushing him as hard as he was trying to get to him. Faust explains that this was different. Unlike the case with the monolith, this was a natural distortion, as if it was preordained. Once it started, it couldn't be stopped, unless the subject of the distortion had a strong will. Dante understood that there was no chance of stopping it. Not this time. Faust confirmed this. Hindley then realized that he had no reason to protect Wuthering Heights anymore. His home never welcomed him, seeing it as rotting away. He could smell the rotting stench as it penetrated his nostrils. Heathcliff didn't know what to make of this almost deranged behavior. Hindley didn't see it as too much of a surprise. Wuthering Heights has absorbed so much hatred over the years, seeing Catherine as hating him as she expired. Well, it depends on her motivations to sending you to M-Corp's loony bin, either to help you, or basically give you one big middle finger. He saw Wuthering Heights, that decaying manor, must crumble. He said this as his distorted form, a form that resembles the lycanthropes of myth, was complete. seeing it as simply as it should be. Hindley, the bereaved lamenter, was a much tougher prospect to fight, but fight him the damned dozen did, as he was threatening their lives sufficiently. And then he was wounded, but still not dead. He receives a flashback of when Catherine asked Hindley where Heathcliff was. Hindley claimed not to know, telling her that he's likely dozing off in some corner, as if he was some lazy bum. He shouted at him, asking where he was. Catherine had returned, treating him like another of the servants. Catherine was asking him why he was sulking. Had he forgotten her? Heathcliff was silent at this. Hindley mocks him for his insolence. He didn't permit him to act so disrespectfully before his sister. Heathcliff then asks, "Why are you laughing?" at him. This confused Catherine, asking why he would say that. She's never laughed at him. She wanted to know why he doesn't appear happy to see her. It's been so long since they've met. Then she noticed that he's so dirty. Heathcliff didn't seem to notice. He then told her that she's right. That's just the way he was born. He likes to be dirty, and he'll be as dirty as he wants to be, saying this defiantly, much to Catherine's confusion. This was the day when Heathcliff denied her for the first time. Hindley had a smile that was never prouder when he watched that happen. Catherine wondered if Heathcliff, who stormed off to the barn, was weeping. Sometime later, likely after Heathcliff left Wuthering Heights, intending never to return, Hindley accused Catherine of conspiring with Linton to take Wuthering Heights from him. It was the only thing that their father gave him. Catherine didn't want the pain from his youth to hold him back from living his life. The same pain that he used as an excuse to harm Heathcliff and her. She'll try all that she can to help him recover, but if he basically tells her to go herself after every opportunity given to him, if he'd rather destroy himself by walking into the abyss, I suspect that the end of that implied, if you'd rather destroy yourself without even trying to get help, by all means, yourself over and embrace oblivion with open arms. As Hindley was dying from his injuries after finally being defeated, he told them that he believed he knew for certain that Catherine died because Heathcliff dared to set foot in Wuthering Heights, seeing him as a wretched devil that should have never come to their home. Well, don't blame him, blame your father. He's the one who brought him there. But in another flashback, it turns out that Heathcliff wasn't entirely without guilt regarding this. As in the past, Heathcliff told Hindley that his father likes him more than Hindley. This angered the spoiled child. Heathcliff taunted him by saying that he might be the one warming himself by the fireplace now, but he's the one that his father truly cares about. A poor child from the filthy backstreets. Catherine knew that Heathcliff shouldn't have said such a thing. This made Hindley explode with anger. Heathcliff told him to hit him. If he wanted to, he could take it, asking what his father will have to say when he sees the wounds that he's inflicted on him. Catherine saw that Heathcliff's words hurt Hindley more than the physical wounds that Hindley would inflict ever could. Burying into his heart, it didn't matter how many times Hindley beat Heathcliff, even after the time that their father died, those words remained. Hindley truly believed this. Then that Heathcliff was there to take everything that he had, As he was beating Heathcliff, he told him to give it back. Give it back. His home, his violin, his future. I have a feeling that you would have destroyed yourself and your future if he wasn't there. You spent your life making excuses for your failures. While there are parts that have external causes, it's mostly down to you. As Ishmael said, you never grew past age 10 as far as emotional maturity is concerned. Yes, and as for how Heathcliff saw this, killing you, at this point it was more mercy killing. Well, at least now that you're dead, you won't have to go to the M-Corp loony bin anymore. Well, Hindley's gone, but there's still at least one more to deal with. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!